Welcome to Prime Suspects, alongside Adam Bjorn and Prime Sports co-founder Joe Brennan Jr. I'm your host, Matt Landis. Today's topics: the states of play in Arizona and New York, and a look ahead to the upcoming NFL draft. Beginning, as we always do, with the latest from inside Prime Sports. Adam, it's been almost 3 months since the announcement that Betcris, powered by Planetech, would be launching in Arizona. As a market, Arizona doesn't seem to get a whole lot of industry coverage. So what are your initial thoughts about its dynamics?
Okay, so we're still on a soft launch. Got today's first bit of merch, so we're getting there. We've had horrible issues getting KYC. We finally had a conversation yesterday that looks like getting us over the line. So we haven't done any bonuses or anything of that nature. I have a list of, I think it's about 150 to 200 people waiting for the welcome bonus. And I've kind of told them, go and play. When we get it sorted, we'll retroactivate it and things like that. So, and then we're also just watching what Prime's doing in some aspects. They've kind of redone their landing page, done a few different advertising things as well. But results-wise, for the little volume that we're doing, we're actually winning. It's kind of constantly a green state. So it's kind of like, not wanting to shift it too much and just keep bringing it in while we can. We're definitely getting people going to exit 2, before you get to the dam. There's a lot of communication with players that are interested in being able to arb. I just saw actually Profit X got a cease and desist, so it looks like they're out. I know Novig's apparently there, Sport Trade's there, so the idea is to start ramping up the arbs as we get into maybe NBA playoffs. We did it on the Masters a little bit and got some good action. But generally it's just, as we've said all along, right now we're prepping for football. We'll get through the, baseball is what baseball is. NBA playoffs, we'll dive in a bit. But ultimately, it's what do we need to have for football, making sure all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle are put together. And it's a slow roll. But I will say from the outset, one of the experiments here was to see, whether it was the brand, whether Prime Sports were just, needing a lot more gasoline to sort of push along brand recognition. Well, you turn up day one with Betcris in Arizona, and branding is going to help us a lot in this situation. So it's going to be a little less required on the marketing side because the recognition of an all-welcoming sports book and everything we're doing with Prime as well resonates a little quicker with the brand Betcris.
I was going to ask you how Arizona has received the Betcris brand, but maybe best to table that until we're out of soft launch and perhaps end of football season. But Adam, I heard you note the results from the handle that you have seen thus far have been quite positive. So how would you describe your customers in Arizona, especially compared to New Jersey and Ohio, where Prime Sports operates, also in partnership with Planetech?
Yeah, so surprisingly, a lot of the early bettors have been general, recreational, $20, $50, $100 bettors. So it's actually been pretty decent from that aspect. We're not sort of chasing our tails on the whole lot of assassins that have come in. Of course, there's a few from Nevada getting down to the border and taking shots where they need to. But again, it's, put the numbers up, take a bet. We'll work out the stuff as we go along. But I have generally seen more smaller bettors sort of coming in early on. Again, I can't imagine these kind of players are limited from elsewhere. So maybe it's brand recognition, maybe it's something different. And as I said, we've yet to do a bonus or anything like that yet. So once we sort of get that rolling out and the database that we've got from the previous licensee and stuff like that, it's there. All the pieces are there. We just fucking need KYC plugged in so you don't have to upload your doc every single time, and then we'll be good to go.
All right, I'm not sure how many episodes we've made it through where the first F-bomb has come from Adam, but that ticket has cashed as perhaps a big underdog this week. And on that note, we will pivot from the Grand Canyon State to the Empire State and our water cooler segment this week. Last week, New York reported a near record month of betting in March with $2.44 billion in handle, marking a 16.3% year-over-year increase and just shy of the all-time monthly handle record of $2.48 billion. Just a few days later, an assemblyman introduced a measure to amend the state's sports betting and horse racing law to limit wagering amounts and ad campaigns. Under the proposed measure, licensed operators could only accept up to $5,000 from any one patron during a 24-hour period. Joe, let's welcome you into the party here, and I'll tee you up by noting that the massive March handle number coupled with this new legislative attempt, seems to present a juxtaposition where state revenue accounts are clearly benefiting, though perhaps at the expense of some constituents. So, using New York as a current example, how should states look to thread the needle between the dual objectives of maximizing revenue and at the same time ensuring consumer protection?
It's actually fairly simple. I mean, we keep talking about like what's the solution for keeping an eye on players. These solutions already exist. I mean, the kind of tracking that banks and credit card companies use for their individual customers. I'm sure you guys have experienced this. You know, you use your credit card someplace where you use it for a larger transaction than what you normally do, or you use it in a place that isn't part of your normal routine or something like that. You exhibit behavior that's an escalation over what you are commonly doing. And that's really what you're looking for in a problem gambler. You're looking for somebody who's escalating. You know, they're a $50 better, then they're a $500 better, and then they're like a $5,000 better. And they do that in a relatively short amount of time. And their deposits, you know, they go from like 1 deposit a week to 5 deposits a day. And these are things that are all readily available that do not need massive interventions or even new integrations in order to watch it. We just need to watch it. We need to act on it. So, but at the same time, I do think that there is a certain amount of preciousness that, and what I mean by that is still a certain unease with the fact, and this is not just with sports betting, but it's with all of gaming, where there's a certain percentage of people who cannot get comfortable with the fact that this is an industry that makes its money off of people losing money. What I do think is interesting is they don't seem to make a distinction between losing money and spending money. Like there's a lot of people who spend money on alcohol, or they spend money on Netflix, or this is a consumer spend. And there's a certain, and this is part of the kind of bipolarism that America has about the gambling industry, is that there is a certain percentage of our society that just doesn't think that it is a virtuous, or not far from it, industry. Now, when it comes to protections also, like I think from a lot of those people, there's this kind of perception that like if one person is damaged, we're all damaged. Or if there isn't perfection in preventing people from escalating, then there's a big problem. And certainly it's a problem if there are like massive numbers of people who are being allowed to escalate beyond their limits. Even my dog thinks so, if you can hear them there in the background. But the problem is people escalate and we don't try and intervene. People do things every day in their daily life that are risky. The riskiest thing I did today wasn't bet on sports. It was, I got in my car. People get in their cars, and we are at an intersection here where I live between legal weed, alcohol, automobiles, all those things. Okay. All of them are now legal. There is no rush to limit those or anything like those. There are standards around driving. Driving's regulated. Alcohol is regulated. You know, legal weed is regulated. All these things are regulated. It's not to ensure that there is no problems. It's to ensure that we minimize problems and that we're able to intercede quickly on problems. So when I see bills like this, which is a mirror of the SAFE Act, it is a ludicrous endeavor, frankly. And it shows me that, I mean, you can always find somebody in the lower house to introduce some sort of bill. Okay, you'll always be able to find that advocate to introduce that bill. We'll see how many co-sponsors sign on to this bill. I don't expect it to be many, because the other thing, and I'm sure Adam will hit this one firm on the head, it's practically running up the flag for everybody who's in the unregulated industry. If something like this were to pass, hey, let's get to New York, because it's not only a flag for the high spenders. Come on over here. If the regulated market won't take your dollars, we'll take them in the offshore industry or Kalshi or the sweeps guys or whatever. It's also the players, the people who do have problems. They're not going to waste their time going, if something like this were to pass, they're not going to waste their time going to the regulated shops. They'll just immediately proceed to the unregulated shops where they don't have to worry about the hangups. So this is a very ludicrous, ill-thought attempt at social engineering. Let's be sensible. We already have the tools to be able to intercede on the behalf of problem gamblers. Let's do that, okay? Because those models are already in place, already working. And let's stop trying to ensure perfection. Perfection is not attainable when it comes to this. But minimizing hurt, damage to people themselves, that certainly is attainable.
Adam, building on Joe's comments and based on Joe's comments, I'm guessing this may be an exercise in futility, but if this legislation or anything like it were to pass, how impactful do you think limits like $5,000 per 24 hours would be on New York operators, especially when we consider many of these operators have robust VIP programs where clients can easily exceed that threshold, and knowing how valuable those VIP accounts are when operators add up all their handle?
Yeah, I mean, it's the old 80-20 rule. 80% of your revenue is from 20% of your players. Overall, I'm guessing there's probably 85% of the players that never hit this threshold, never even get close. But then the 15% that do touch this is where, again, you're earning anywhere from 60 to 80% of revenue, so it's impactful. I mean, Joe hit the nail on the head. The first thing is, all this is going to do is build the unregulated market is hurting. They're feeling the pain. And again, there's some of the biggest states that have yet to open. If the legislators start doing stuff like this, then they just get another breath of fresh air, and then they're going to reposition and look at targeting certain things like, $10,000 or $5,000 minimum deposits. And they just go after that high-end player. They don't worry about the scraps and the ones that can, be a nuisance to deal with and things like that. They just target the players that the states don't seem to want. But this is just, again, Joe sort of said it, is across the landscape. There's just so many people that are being reactive to the sports betting that isn't, in my opinion, yes, there's big numbers and things like that, but turn on the iGaming and just watch those numbers flood. Then you're going to start having the states potentially losing revenues. So then what are they going to do? Fast track iGaming, try and raise the taxes. Then you got the federal CFTC games coming in. You got the sweepstakes and all these things that they don't do it. Then you've got fella upstairs cutting Medicaid and all these federal fundings and that. Now the states are going to feel more pain and things on their level, and they're going to look to these things. It's just a mad, vicious cycle of people running around like headless chickens, truly not understanding what the business is and how to sort of maximize it and what you're competing against and things like that. So, it's somewhat of a clown show watching each of these bills sort of show up and then disappear and then show up and disappear. But I just wish someone somehow would grab hold of them and sort of explain to them how this business works and what they're going to do by bringing something like this into play. Then again, regulated, you just go and build other. It's insanity. It's all I can sort of say at the end of the day is, what the fuck are they thinking?
Hey, we got 2 F-bombs out of the guy. I haven't dropped one yet. With my follow-up, let me see if I can get one. I drop one gratuitously. The problem that you have right now is there's a certain amount of not really reading the moment very well, I think, by lawmakers. And it's not all lawmakers, but it's a combination of the attitude that we're talking about here, where there's this kind of division between like, yes, we want the money, but we don't like gambling. How many states have lotteries? Lottery is the most regressive form of gambling in the United States, and they're all state-run monopolies. So the states are the biggest ones going out there and benefiting from gambling, and how important that money is to the annual state budget. But that doesn't mean that they're like going to throw a parade for it or anything like that. There's a certain percentage of people who feel like this is a dirty business. Let's just say it. They think it's a dirty business. They think it's immoral. They think it's horrible, and they think it's preying on people, mainly because you've got a lot of people saying that this is an industry that's preying on people. You don't hear as much about like alcohol or any of the other sin industries or things like that. Just the fact that we're grouped, the sin industries, as if like, I don't know, speeding in your car and driving recklessly isn't a sin or something like that, but that's okay. But anyway, they're not reading the moment really well. It's never been easier to circumvent whatever guardrails have been put in place by government and others in order to be able for consumers to access product that they want. Okay. Now, I'm not the kind of person that would say like, hey, look, let's just remove all the guardrails. I'm not libertarian like that. I was the guy who spent 10 years trying to get a law passed, not just getting laws removed. But if you're a state lawmaker and what you're saying is like, well, in order to participate in our market, you've got to pay a lot of money, first in licensing fees, and then you got to pay a ton of tax. It makes it almost impossible, if possible at all, in order to profit, in order to, take money that we're just going to take our cut off the top, regardless of how profitable you are for our state budget, so we can add it to our state budget because we don't have the guts to raise taxes, state taxes on our own people. So we're going to do it through you by granting you this monopoly, this license to collect taxes for us, because that's really what it gets down to. Sorry for any lawmakers who might be offended by that. Okay. But that's the reality of this business. It's an alternate tax program for states that don't want to levy taxes directly on their citizens. So they're willing to do this one, which is a voluntary opt-in tax. Having said that, if right now I live in the state of Virginia has legal sports betting.
Commonwealth.
Well, oh God, you sound like my daughter, Matt. Yes, the Commonwealth of Virginia. Okay. One of 4, and I've lived in 3 of them. So anyway, and you get a Mars bar, Matt, if you can name all 4 Commonwealths without looking it up on Google.
Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Kentucky, Virginia.
All right, I'll send you a Mars bar. Anyway, so I can bet online right now legally, but there's really nothing in the way of me betting online illegally, right? I could open up an offshore account if I wanted to. And right now, there's plenty of sweeps operators here, and I can bet a Kalshi as well. And oddly enough, this is one of the few areas, metropolitan areas in the United States, the DC area, where there doesn't seem to be any street bookies, but it's conspicuous for that. But almost every other big city in America, you can find street bookies pretty easily, right? PPH guys. So it's never been easier for a person to bet in whatever manner that they want to bet. So, all right, well, how do states and commonwealths make it more attractive for citizens like me to use their license regulated product? That's where the focus should be. Like, okay, what about the regulated industry makes it better than betting with the offshore guys or the sweeps guys or the Kalshi guys or the guys down on the corner or something like that? Instead of, it seems to be like, how can we punish and wring the most money out of the guys who are willing to play by the rules? That's kind of how all this stuff sounds nowadays. How can we just wring the most that we can and continue to stand on the necks of those guys? Because that's how it's perceived in the industry when you get your tax rate doubled and then proposed to be doubled again. Okay. And then with everything, like we've got to watch our players like hawks. We got to bar people who are self-excluded. We got to be on the watch for people who are problem gamblers. We have to intercede. We have to do all of these things. In the end, it's never been easier for somebody to say, like, I'm not going to go that direction because what does it get me? And so lawmakers, they got to read the moment a little better, and they got to be a little more entrepreneurial and think, how do we make our regulated market more attractive, not just equally attractive? Like you can bet the same amount of money, you can use the same payment methods. How do you make the regulated market in your state more attractive than the unregulated options so that your citizens opt into that voluntarily and then deprive all these other guys from oxygen? Instead, they go the other way. And that's going to be a problem because when you look at the Kalshi thing, that's going to be protracted court battle, right? That's going to take a while to wind its way. In the meantime, nothing's happening to offshore because they have pretty much figured out what's the appropriate distance to have, what's the appropriate arm's length. So it makes it hard, if not impossible, for law enforcement to reach out and get them, right? And then the street guys, oh my God. I mean, they rolled up, 35 guys in New Jersey a week ago? They were probably, by the next day, everybody had a new account, that was probably replaced within a day or two, the street level operation. So lawmakers, if you're listening, think about how do we make our business better? How do we allow our operators to make it more attractive for people so that they're attracted to this market rather than forced into the marketplace? Okay, that's the end of my TED Talk this week. Did I say one F-bomb? I don't think I did.
I don't think we're there yet. We still have one segment to go, though. So, from the Commonwealth states by way of the Big Apple to the Big Board and our look-ahead segment, The NFL draft begins Thursday night in Green Bay. Adam, how would you describe your general philosophy on booking the draft as an information-driven market? And how is that reflected in the bet types and bet limits Prime and Betcris are offering?
All right. So first of all, I actually had tickets to the draft and I should be in Wisconsin this week, but I am not going. I am in Costa Rica doing work like I should be doing. So
I know a Wisconsin native who would take those tickets in a heartbeat.
yes, had it all planned. I was in Michigan for Easter. I was just going to drive. Apparently there's a ferry or something. You stick your car on, go across that big lake in the middle and land on the other side. Anyway.
Lake Michigan.
Here we are actually doing the work. So I'm not going to lay out I read the articles, how bookmakers hate this. And no, like chicken shit bookmakers hate this. This is where a bookmaker really gets to be challenged, to be on top of their craft, to take the information in and usually be in a bad position when the event starts. Yes, negative equity, negative CLV, all those kind of negative aspects to it. But again, this is just another thing to go battle to the customers. And this is where you actually get to battle the best of the best. And generally, yes, you'll lose. So when you do win as a bookmaker, it's an extra, pat on the back, gold star kind of thing. So I'm not going to go down that path. Yes, limits are low, and I don't give a shit about the customers that complain. That's the way it is. Take it or leave it. That's just the name of the game. There's so many props, so many added markets and that over the last sort of 6-7 years that have sort of made this a bigger, broader thing. Again, traders, you don't need to go nuts. Just put up enough stuff to keep interest, the key players, the key teams, stuff like that. And ultimately, that's sort of what needs to be done. It's part of the business. Enjoy it. It's the beginning of the NFL sort of aspect of it for this season. Now, to give some insights into how bad some of these positions can be, Cam Ward to go first pick opened up minus 280, currently minus 20,000. We're in a situation where we're on the no at about 4-1. So that's a little bit of a bad position, but so be it. Travis Hunter, second pick, first bet was at plus 250. He's now around minus 1,600. So again, we're on the no at about plus 300 with a few good results and whatnot. Will Campbell, first offensive lineman, first bet at plus 200, now around minus 900 or something. And we're on him to not be the first lineman at about plus 140 with the market around minus 900. So shit happens. You get yourself into a bad position. You hope that they change their mind come the night of. However, first wide receiver, all winners, whoever's selected first wide receiver. They've taken the action, they've moved the lines, and we currently win. Now, this can change before Thursday shows up, but all of those 15 or whatever listed are all currently winning, ranging from small winners to complete skinners kind of thing. So it's a tough spot for bookmakers to be in, but that's what we're here for, to take bets, to offer product, and you just kind of use it as a marketing tool. But it also gets you when, they pull up and says what the first pick is, second pick. Again, it's entertaining. It's like watching the Oscars or the Emmys or the Grammys or any of these kind of things. It's just, you generally don't win on those as a bookmaker, but also as a bettor, I've had lots of success in these things against other bookies, and we're in the same spot here. I have my bookmaker in Jamaica that I'm able to get some action down, so I have some positions, and I'm looking forward to the draft. But again, this is where the betting and the booking and that sort of can get mixed up a little bit, and you just cheer for bigger result.
Joe, Adam referenced an article by Ben Fox of Yahoo Sports, which quotes Circa Sports Director of Operations Jeff Benson saying bookmakers hate the draft, in stark contrast to what Adam just shared. And Benson noted Circa torches 5 to 6 figures per year on the draft. The article also explores 2020's draft as a turning point, why the draft is so difficult to book, and why operators bother to offer it at all, along with perspectives from prominent bettors to represent the other side of the counter. How would you describe your top takeaways from these topics, and perhaps anything else from Fox's article?
What I like about Jeff Benson is he seems to have really kept alive the old school bookmakers approach to the media, right? If you're an old school bookie in Vegas, you never had a big win or anything like, if you had a plus weekend, it was like a small win for the house. But most of the time you were talking about how the public took your teeth and how you're going to be getting a fifth mortgage on your house and the kids are going to be eating Cheerios instead of eggs and stuff like that. So Jeff is doing exactly what he should be doing, which is when he says that, that's like a dinner bell for people to go and bet, right? Oh, it must be such a beatable thing, the NFL draft. So congratulations, Jeff. It's good to see some people are still keeping the old school martial arts alive in this business, right? What's great about all this from a business perspective, Adam and his team, yeah, they got to try and make this profitable. That's a tough road to hoe. From a business perspective, this is brilliant, right? First of all, the majority of the business are acquiring their customers, especially the squares, during NFL season. And what a great way of extending the NFL season. Like there are no games being played. Yet somehow the NFL draft is at the top of every goddamn show. Every sport. I mean, the NBA and the NHL are in the playoffs. The Phillies and the Mets are in a series right now, right? And all you hear at the top of every show, everywhere, is draft, draft, draft. So the league has done a great job of hyping it, and the media just dwells on it. They eat it up. And so this is an awesome opportunity for the sports books to keep all those customers that they gained at great expense during football season, to try and keep them active, or if they haven't bet in a few weeks or since the Super Bowl, to reactivate them. This is a great way to do it. So this is a gift from God as far as sportsbook businesses are concerned. I do think it's funny, though, when you hear people, the way they talk about this. The one thing about the draft is, you already have people, they talk about how they've got generational quarterback or this. I think it's hilarious because in the first round, except for people drafting offensive and defensive linemen, the rest of it, the skill positions where people really want to talk about that stuff, they're absolutely the hardest to project future performance based on past performance. Quarterback, which is the number one thing that everybody talks about, is the second hardest position in all of North American pro sports to predict future success. The hardest is goaltender in the NHL, but the second hardest is quarterback. And so all of these people who they talk about like, this guy's a can't miss, or this, nobody knows. Not even the experts, not even the guys who get paid to know, like the GMs and their scouting staff. They don't know. So while it's really easy, relatively speaking, to predict success in the draft, whether any of these guys ever actually pan out into the franchise quarterback that people project them to be, most of the times they are not. But the left tackle, or the nose tackle, or the defensive end, yeah, those guys are surefire guys.
Adam, I'd like to follow up with you here for a last word, because to Joe's point, the NBA and NHL playoffs are going on, baseball season's heating up. I'm wondering how much all of this plays into your appetite to book the draft, with the knowledge that for a lot of people, logging in to bet on the NFL draft doesn't mean the betting is going to stop there.
No, and that's it. You take the bets, you have the screen full. It's like what we're looking at, the different silos of the different products, the different verticals and all those kind of things. You have people coming for the MLB because it's their time of year. And they come from a football town and they have either favorite college player or favorite NFL team and the draft's on. Again, the idea is to have as much content up as possible across all the different sports. Nobody generally is, just looking for one or two things. They do have a breadth. If you're in the sports and you're in the sports betting, you like to tickle and play in other places as well. But Joe sort of summed it up. This is just the NFL doing such a great job at expanding the season, making this whole week, draft week. I mean, I'm sure somewhere on some channel, somewhere you'll be able to pick up the Kevin Costner Draft Day movie as well, which is always some fun to watch. So again, it's just adding more content, plugging it in, and yeah, it's NFL. This is what the most of the US generally compact into. So bringing that at this time of year, and I think it were 100 days to the Hall of Fame game as well. So this is just balancing it up, but it's getting ready. I mean, that's what we're talking about in the business. What do we need to do to get ready for football? That's the conversation right now.
And with that, Joe and Adam, you guys are off the clock with 2 days and change remaining before the Tennessee Titans go on the clock. To the audience, thanks as always for tuning in. Enjoy the draft, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at PrimeSuspects_, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.